every executive, every manager, every individual has this same experience, of basically seeing someone else failing and then saying, well, this person failed, maybe I can help. But to the very least, I see they're pushing forward, so I'm going to push forward.
Welcome to Growth Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? You've probably heard about OKRs. Maybe you've read a book about it. Maybe your company has embraced OKRs and you know the power of it. Well, we're going to be talking with a special guest today, but let's just talk a little bit about what OKRs, objectives and key results. This has a foundation in the technology world. I won't go through the details, but the very simple aspect of it is getting up a clear objective. What direction are we going? And what's the focus for us as an organization? And then once you have that clear, then you create goals underneath that, which are called key results. They're very specific, they're very measurable, and those are the things that tie together that help organizations move and navigate fast growth. Now, if you are on the Inc. list, you've probably heard this, you've probably heard companies talk about the power of these things. They can go off the rails. You can't emphasize these things. So today we're going to be talking with Ivan Osmak. He's a co-founder at Gtmhub. GTM is a company that creates the automation behind this because they really believe that you should be able to measure them and they should be automatically, when you get to a certain point, they should automatically flow into it. And there should be open transparency. One of the best things about this interview is talking about the power of transparency. And we talk about that from the perspective of the OKRs, but it really works across all parts of the organization. So stay tuned to this interview with Ivan. Thanks for tuning in here to Growth Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews in the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. So you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Growth Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. Now, here is the interview with Ivan Osmak, co-founder of Gtmhub. Hi, Ivan. How are you?
Hi, Gene. Doing great. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Well, I have been excited to talk to you about this conversation because I hear it amongst a lot of owners. But before we get into it, tell us a little bit about Gtmhub.
Gtmhub is a company that helps predominantly large organizations, I would say first and foremost, set and manage OKRs, but much more importantly, helps them to be successful, helps them to achieve their goals through the objectives and key results framework. And the way we do that is basically we connect to about 150 different business systems, and we automatically update key results, making basically the company see the performance in real time and being able to change course very rapidly and not waiting 1 or 2 quarters. So that would be it.
Well, objective and key results are probably familiar to most of the audience, but for those that haven't, give us your best kind of definition of those.
Sure. So objectives and key results, I think it's probably the 5th or 6th iteration of ways to set and manage goals. It really comes to managing goals. And the reason why they're so popular and so widely popular actually today is that they're so simple. So basically you have an objective, which is a qualitative statement, such as we want to grow more, or we want to ship better product, or whatever it is, something that communicates what is your goal, what is your intention to everyone in the organization. And then you have key results, which basically say, this is how we are going to measure success. So if it's growing more, then it could be, we want to achieve monthly growth of 18%. We also want to have, let's say, ACV of $50,000, because one of the main differences that I think OKRs bring that KPIs who were dominant before that bring is this multi-dimensionality. So you can basically draw a box of constraints, not just have one number, but you can say, okay, we want to add 2,000 new customers, but we don't want to spend $100 million on marketing, right? So you can kind of put it in a realistic way. So that's basically it. That's OKRs. You have objective, you have 3 to 4 measurements, and you just spread this across the organization.
So when I talk about this with clients, the objectives are really kind of high level, they're directional, and they're focus based. And companies have more than one OKR. What's your kind of principles around how many OKRs to have? I know it probably varies by team and where you are, but what are the principles you go by?
So I would say, and this is maybe where we are a bit different, and I would say the less the better, because one of the main reasons why you want to adopt OKRs is focus, right? So if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority, right? And this is where I would say the OKRs, and even if you don't use software, and even if you kind of fail with the process where they bring tremendous value, is this thinking process where you go through, okay, we have these 15 things we would like to do as a company, but this is the one that's most important, or those are the 2 most important. 3 would be absolute maximum. Yeah. And what I've seen is that 3 basically on any entity. So it could be company, department could have 3, individual could have 3, team could have 3, but no one single entity should own more than 3. And I would say if you can do it with less, it's better. The message becomes clearer. The people get mobilized against it. They see, oh, okay, so it's really about the growth. We don't care about profit. We don't care about gross margin. Oh, sorry, I keep talking about the SaaS business because this is what I do 24/7. But the tighter it is, basically, just like product, just like basically anything, yeah. Like writing or whatever it is. The tighter you make it, the cleaner you make it, the more effective it gets. So I would say 3 at the max. If you can do it with 1, which may be a really kind of exercise in reductionism, that would be great. But 1 or 2 are usually what we see to work the best.
I like fewer as well when I think about this with my teams, because if you're distracted in too many areas, it ends up not really getting anywhere. When you take this to the next level, because I think of the OKRs are great at the very top level with executive teams setting direction and focus for the company. Each individual team, like an engineering team or a customer service team or sales team and marketing teams, all these teams should also have their OKRs. Tell us a little bit about how the team kind of works with that.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, and what we think is the best practice, we also think that every individual should have an OKR, at least 1. So, like you said, I would say it's quite easy to set it for the company, and those actually don't tend to change that often. So, for example, at Gtmhub, what we advise our customers is to set company level OKRs to be on annual basis, because you're not going to change your plans or your strategy every quarter, right? Whereas your tactics and implementation of how are you going to get there, that changes, and this is owned then by teams, by individuals, by departments, and I would say what we learned, and we've been doing this now for quite some time, almost 5 years. What we've learned is that there's basically several types of objectives that you want to do. And I think, from KPI methodology, you have this idea of lagging and leading indicators. And I think that first time people tend to focus too much on the lagging indicators, which is, by far the most popular first OKR on our trials is increased revenue. I mean, it's like 98%, right? So I wouldn't say it's too surprising, but okay, increased revenue is fine. We need to track this. We need to know where it has to go, and that's completely fine. But then, if you're, let's say, account executive, maybe, or you're an SDR team or whatever, right? The way you're going to impact this, a lot of times will depend on your behavior. So, for example, as an account executive, are you qualifying enough, right? That's kind of, I think, a lot of junior and less experienced salespeople, they just go and want to close the deal without really asking too many questions, right? Or you just send the quote right away. So, you could have basically an objective as account executive, improve qualification, and then you would have various metrics around that, which would be, get at least 5 problems or at least 7 problems, have at least 6 people involved on the deal because you need to get different perspectives, right? And this is what we call a leading indicator. And what happens is basically always, it's, it sounds like magic, but there's nothing magical. Once people start really qualifying the deals, they start closing the deals. So they do, they hit their lagging indicator. Same goes for engineering, and I can give here many examples. What do you do in engineering? Well, one thing is you could say ship more features. Fine, okay, but how do you ship more features, right? Well, if you're really building agile, that means that you're going to have smaller pieces of work. You're going to cut them in more pieces. So this is what you can track actually. Instead of saying ship 5 features, you could say no single story to last more than 3 days. And then it's this behavioral, I would say, OKRs that you have in every single function that really create magic down the road. And then as a department, you would have these lagging indicators, right? Okay, department itself is just a collection of people. So department kind of has yes, we need to sell, I don't know, 7 million bookings this quarter. That's what we need to do. But the people, how are they going to, it's this mix of basically of behavioral, of target, of aspiration, of everything. And, once it's deployed properly, what we see is basically OKRs are the only truth. Like Atlassian, I was going to say the famous company, I think we all know about them, right? One of the, I would say, probably best companies I've ever seen. With them, they have this thing inside where if you want to get something done, if you cannot prove like, okay, this is my OKR and this is your OKR, and if they don't match, it doesn't get done. I mean, it becomes this supernatural law, basically, where you cannot go over it, right? This is when it's deployed, I would say, completely in the beginning, people kind of just try it out. But those would be some of the examples.
Hold on for a second. Ivan just talked about everyone having an individual OKR. Now, what this really means is that you want each individual person to have a number that they can track to. They want to have that objective, but they also want to have the key measurements or the key results that allow them to see where they're on track. Now, when we talk about this a little bit further into the interview, we talk about the power of transparency, but when everyone has a number that they're attached to, it gives them something to focus on, and they know when they're off the mark. They don't need all the reviews that they need in places where they don't have these numbers, but they know exactly where they need to show up. Now, hopefully, they will raise their hand and they will say, hey, look, I need a little bit of help with this because this is in jeopardy of not getting to where we want to meet. So I want to make sure that we're on target. I really believe that each individual person should have measurable OKRs, but also they should have something that they're personally attached to. Maybe a skill they're trying to learn and really move their business forward. They would show up to work with more ownership when they have that. Now back to the interview.
Well, we've got a pretty good basis of OKRs, how they're applied at the top level through teams and even through the individual levels. I really love that aspect. When you think about your work and what you're doing, give us an idea of how Gtmhub excuse me, fits into that.
Yeah, so I think that OKRs they're almost devilishly simple. And I just explained you the whole, basically everything you need to know about OKRs. I explained you in like 30 seconds, and there is really not much more than that. So people see them or read an article, or read a book, whatever. This is, by the way, one of typical kind of ways that someone comes to us. Their CEO was flying. He read the John Doerr book, came back and said, okay, we are doing this, right? So then we have to kind of reel them back a bit. So what we are doing is we are making this, I would say, very unpleasant reality of implementing OKRs. We are making it both pleasant and possible, and especially when you go at scale. All right. So if you're 10, 15 people, you can do OKRs any way you want. You can have Post-it notes, you can have Asana, Excel, whatever. Even at 30 people, this is our kind of number when we see that they are breaking, it just becomes a bit too much, right, to manage. And then, these last few days, remote work is all the rage on Twitter and everywhere, right? Yeah. So how do you manage this with remote people? And I mean, we're a small company, we're only about 70 people, and we have 5 offices, right? And then a bunch of people working from home. And this is one, I would say, single truth that you have. This is why it needs to be digital. right? This is the one. This is how we fit. And then second thing, and I think here we are maybe have a very different opinion than everyone else, almost a bit radical, in so much that we think that if you cannot automate a key result, it's a bad key result, right? And automate, it doesn't have to be with Gtmhub, with whatever it is. And the reason why we think this is so important is that if you don't have this very clear way of getting some key result, it's going to end up being fluff, right? And then maybe you update it, maybe you don't, maybe it's very hard to update it, or it's maybe just bad. Like people have like read 5 business books. No one cares about this. OKR is about outcome, not about output. Your outcome should be to close, I don't know, increase your win rate by 30% if you're a salesperson. Are you going to listen to podcasts, read books, get hypnotized or whatever? That's completely up to you. I don't care, your boss doesn't care, our board doesn't care, no one cares about this, right? And then the question is, how do you automate reading 5 books? Or you shouldn't, because it's a bad KR, right? So if you don't have this data, if you don't know it, and that's, I would say, that's first our general guiding idea, that if you cannot automate it, it's not a good key result. And this is how we fit, right? Because there was no way, and there is still no way to do it aside from us. And that would be, I said, we call it sometimes the enterprise singularity and all kinds of crazy words that we throw around. We actually don't publicly talk about this, but this idea that everything is known in real time in an organization, everything that needs to be known, right?
Well, I know when we talk about this, it's very easy for the natural leader to go, okay, great. This is very numbers driven. I love the fact that it's measurable or even automated. But when we talked about this, one of my concerns was people overemphasize on the numbers and the strategy, and they don't really focus on the people side of this. So when you think about, I'm going to ask you my magic question around this. With fast growth companies, as a leader, what's more important, employees or customers?
Oh, customers without employees, without any doubt. Yeah, no. I mean, we make a lot of mistakes, I would say, all the time. Not just, I mean, we as a company, but I would imagine all the other companies. And good times come, and then bad times come, and the only thing that's constant, I think, is the strong team, and taking care of employees, making sure. I mean, in all senses, from. I'm from Eastern Europe, so I think that financially taking care of people is paramount. That's the first thing, kind of the table stakes. But then just making sure that everyone, I think, understands why are we doing this, what's the point, and it's very hard, obviously, to work long hours or not to work long hours, but to work high intensity. I think working 8 hours. With 100% concentration is basically impossible, right? So I'm not going into the whole weekends, but so how OKRs fit into this, and how they make, I think, the team stronger. One is they bring almost radical transparency. So, for example, in our company and most of our customers, every single person, a person who joined yesterday, knows our MRR, our growth, our churn, everything that's legally possible. In Europe, for example, salaries cannot be shared. Otherwise, we would share this as well. But it's against some privacy laws, right? So that's, I think that that basically makes this everyone's mission to a degree, because there's no hiding. I think on the other hand, what it does when we set the OKRs, and everyone can see my OKR and the company's OKRs, and then held me accountable for this. It makes it, I would say, much more of a team effort than just kind of missile shooting from management below. So I would say, and basically what I would say, when everyone knows what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how are they helping, and then their peers, superiors, and people who report to them also know that. It just makes this very healthy atmosphere where it's very hard to do politics. It's very hard to use information as security and all as currency and all these other things that I think happen in large organizations without this transparency. So that's a very long answer. I would say transparency basically is the main reason. With transparency comes ownership, purpose, sense of purpose, and all the other things that we do. Because at least in IT industry, you know, most of people can actually find job like 30 minutes after quitting the previous one. So you cannot really keep people without, you know, making this somehow common.
Let's hold on for a second. Ivan just talked about that is employee first. I know he stumbled a little bit, but he really does believe that it's employee first. And a lot of people may disagree with that. But let me let you in on my research. If you haven't heard this before, but I've talked to over 500 founders and CEOs of fast-growing companies, just like Ivan and all the people listening in here. And many of those people, when I ask this question, will say that it's employee first. Now, I don't mean just a fraction above 50%. I mean almost 94%. I've been tracking this for a long time. I've got some very specific data around this. We're writing the book about a lot of these aspects, but they believe in employee first. What that really means is, as leaders, they are really understand the importance of retaining valuable talent, of really getting them optimized and engaged in the work that they're doing. And so their job is to make sure that's possible. But that means the company is able to put the customer first. So it doesn't mean the customer is not important. It just means that the leader's job is to focus on the employees when you get to a certain point of growth and you really want to stay that. A lot of bigger companies lose sight of that. They focus back on customers because of short-term needs and the need to hit quarterly numbers and things like that. So I really want to remind you of this research. Now back to the interview with Ivan.
You know, I love the fact that you include in there about radical transparency. It is about the numbers, and OKRs really fit that. But it's also the notion that we're going to be open and honest with each other, and we're going to see what each other's up to. Like, you're not, you know, we've all worked in those situations where people have tried to hide their work or hide their what they're doing. And those things just, they cause problems inside of cultures and leadership. And this way of doing it really does open that bit of transparency. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people get scared when they talk about sharing financials and all these aspects. What has been the value of sharing the financials across your organization?
Well, I think, again, you know, I think there is an inherent trust that we have in organization in each other, regardless of, you know, the hierarchy. We have a very, I would say, simple and clear hierarchy. We are one of the few startups that had org chart like since employee 3. And, you know, it's again about radical transparency. There is no this, well, you know, you are really the boss. No, you are really, you know, you're running this. It's all like this. And once you have, I mean, once you see the numbers, I think it brings also a lot of humility across the organization. You know, I can speak from my own example. So, for example, this last year, I had an OKR which was to raise a Series A, and then, you know, it was key results were like pitched to this many investors, whatever it was, right? And then, you know, and then it would get this many term sheets, and then day after day, you know, as anyone knows who was fundraising, you go in and I say, okay, you know, this particular fund said no. This fund said no, you know. So there's, I mean, it just brings this idea that, you know, everyone sees me basically failing and just still going forward. And there is no, you know, this like, well, you know, I went there, I told them, you know, just hands, and they said, you know, where should we wire the money? And I think that this kind of, you know, I use myself as an example, but every executive, every manager, every individual has this same experience, you know, of basically seeing someone else failing and then saying, well, you know, this person failed, maybe I can help. But to the very least, you know, I see they're pushing forward, so I'm going to push forward. And again, it comes back to this, I would say, cohesiveness. You know, I think, you know, that, again, I'm speaking about us as a company mostly because of OKRs, not as a function of something else. But, you know, it's we always, as any company, we had some really, really hard times, and then you have some really good times. But when people know that, you know, okay, now we are in the hard mode, and then we are out, then, you know, this fear of, oh, you know, what's going on, and speculations and everything else that you know may happen is just disappearing, because everyone knows, and everyone knows what's going on. So I would say that is absolutely the single most important thing that comes out of this transparency. That if you know, if the numbers are not there, if the facts are not there, people will make them up on their own, and they're usually much worse than than the actual ones, right? But there will always be some sort of facts, going around the water cooler, or people who smoke, or people who drink coffee, or whoever, people who go out, they will have the speculations, and that just, in my opinion, to the very least, very much reduces the productivity, and I would say on the extreme side, can actually kill the company, right? It's just this idea of.
I agree with you. And I think the people that try to manage that from a leadership, the fear that runs through that actually permeates through all aspects of the organization, because fear of sharing the numbers is a real thing. When you think about OKRs and your perspective across many companies and what you're doing, give us one or two mistakes as we wrap up today's episode.
Yeah, I think that, the number one mistake, or the overarching mistake, is thinking that this is some magic potion that, now we'll adapt OKRs and, we'll be Google in one quarter. I really don't think there is any magic. I oftentimes compare it, let's say, to starting to work out and maybe go on some of these, dietary regimes like keto or whatever. It absolutely works. If you go to gym 5 times a week and you stick to your regime, you will achieve whatever, you want to lose 50 pounds, or you want to gain 20 pounds and muscles. It will absolutely happen. 100% of the times, right? That being said, it's very hard, right? To do it. And what I would say, OKRs are basically, OKRs are, you're either a diet or a gym, if you will. They do give you the ability to, to have a, I would say, safe way. You have this machine, so you're not going to get injured, and you know what to do, and there is a plan. This is what we need to do. So this is what OKRs are. They're not any more than that. That being said, you will sweat a lot. So going back to mistakes, thinking that now just that we set them, that's going to be first and everything's going to work. No, it's not. And then second is basically it's a mistake, but also a solution in one. I always have one OKR, which is basically kill it with OKRs. It's a meta OKR, right? So I assign it to myself, and it's always, everyone's going to have an OKR. There's not going to be OKRs without key results or bad OKRs or whatever. Not to go into details, and we will hit 70%. And then this basically becomes my obsession for a quarter, right? Make sure everyone has OKRs, make sure they're doing it. Now that everyone is doing it, we see that something is failing, then go there. So I would say mistake is to think it's going to be too easy, and then second, not to take it serious. It is work. They are the rails to success, but you still need to really, really push, and it's both encouraging and disappointing at the same time.
Well, I think they're a solid framework for those organizations that want to stay together, work toward something together, and really have the ability to be transparent about our progress toward that. And I know Gtmhub is great for the automation of these things, and I really appreciate you sharing your insights, Ivan, and being here on the Growth Think Tank podcast.
Thanks so much, Gene.
Wow, what a powerful interview. I really love the way he explains some of these things. So it's really easy for those to understand OKRs if you've never heard of them before. I know his accent's a little bit strong, but I wanted to make sure that this was available to you because it's really important for you to have objectives for the entire team, to know what direction you're going and what you're focusing on, and to have results, those key results behind that, really to measure your progress. I love the fact that we talked about lagging and leading indicators. They're really important to understand the difference between them, and really how most people are missing the opportunity to focus on leading indicators. Well, this wraps up this episode of Growth Think Tank. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.